to any customer or client who is credible and really wants to have a healthy relationship with his or her financiers or their financiers, the biggest fear is, are we able to repay as and when due?
Right.
Once that concern is addressed, it becomes easier for them to digest the idea of taking a loan.
This is the Experience Pod, where we focus on emerging technologies, trends, and their impact on business landscapes in Nigeria and across Africa. SMEs play a major role in most economies. Of course, according to the World Bank, they represent about 90% of businesses and more than 50% of employment worldwide. Specifically in emerging markets, SMEs serve as a backbone by contributing to economic growth. According to the 2020 Nigerian SME survey, which we conducted at PwC, SMEs in Nigeria contribute about 48% of our national GDP and account for 84% of our employment. So basically, no SME, no economy. But despite the significant contributions of SMEs to the Nigerian economy, there are a number of challenges that still persist and hinder the growth and development of the sector. For one, about half of registered SMEs don't have access to formal credits, according to the 2020 Nigerian SME survey. Coupled with tax challenges, the lack of entrepreneurial education, growing competition, infrastructure deficits, and of course some of the macroeconomic obstacles. However, with the right policies, reforms, regulations, and infrastructure in place, this sector has the potential to transform the Nigerian economy. Taking advantage of technology, Primera delivers fast, convenient financial solutions to SMEs with the strong belief that the success of Nigeria's economy is contingent on their growth. To add insights to this conversation, we're joined by the MD of Primera MFB, Mr. Unwana Esang. Welcome, Unwana.
Thank you so much.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Pleasure being here.
Yes, you're welcome. And I'll be your host for today. My name is Abimbola Banjo. I'm a partner with the management consulting practice in PwC, and I look after finance advisory for West Africa. So let's start with some background, Unwana.
Sure, of course.
Tell me about the Primera journey so far.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been a 2.5 year journey so far for me, and it's been hugely exciting. Joining Primera, all I could see was huge opportunities. I mean, a huge opportunity set and a platform that one could leverage on to explore and deliver on those opportunities. And it's been really exciting getting to know the people, manage the people, and grow the business and also engage with the market. It's been fantastic.
Very good, very good. And so let's talk about Primera's offerings. So what do you guys do at Primera? Because we know that you have conventional products such as loans, deposits, which are the bread and butter of any MFB. But just tell us, how have you guys differentiated your processes, your experience in assessing these products or in delivering these products as a differentiator to what other financial institutions are doing?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very interesting question. And the first thing I'd like to say is we're operating in a highly commoditized market.
Right.
Products and services are pretty much the same across because the platforms that help financial services institutions to deliver those products and services are democratized. They are available to everybody. And in as much as we are very, very bullish and keen on leveraging on those platforms, we've realized that it's become less about the products and services, but more around how we deliver them, how we engage, and how we are able to get from our customers what their needs are. And within the context of the available capacities of those products and services, tweak them to meet their needs. So, I mean, for us, we consider ourselves to be partners for growth. And in realizing that we're focusing more on how we deliver and engage, realizing that no two businesses are the same, really. Absolutely. So we have a differentiated approach in terms of delivery and service.
Okay, so speaking more about this how you engage and deliver.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the how.
So the how is more around, first of all, you need to know your customer. Right. It's a cliche, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot that goes into that. Mm-hmm. What is the customer's dream? What are their ambitions? And are you then able to look back into your delivery systems and even in your internal processes, policies, to make sure that you are able to be nimble and you're able to deliver different experiences to different customers from the same platforms according to their differentiated needs. That's the way I would just couch it and envelope that particular point.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we know that Primera caters to individuals and businesses alike. I think what we've noticed is that you have a keen interest for SMEs.
Yes, we do.
So what way are your products tailored to them?
So the number one need from an SME in terms of financing is speed. Speed of service. They typically run their cash flows in daily, weekly cycles. And therefore the financial gaps that they experience, present themselves in those ways. Okay. So what we've done is we have come up with systems and capacities that allow us to deliver that need quickly. Mm-hmm. And at the point of need and how they want it. So that for us, that's how we've been able to provide that, because when we really look at it, that is actually what they need. So we have to ensure that our decisioning is done properly, accurately, according to all the prudential guidelines of banking. But that is done in a very, very efficient, time-efficient way, cost-efficient way as well.
Absolutely.
And we're then able to meet that number one need of our customers.
Brilliant. I'm enjoying this so far. So tell me, you know what we've seen that angel financing, right?
Yeah.
Is what most SMEs use in starting up their businesses.
Yeah.
Right. So 48% of businesses in Nigeria, according to our recent survey, said they would prefer private equity or debt financing to fund their businesses, right? Mm-hmm. But what we see today is that 48% actually use angel financing.
Yes.
Right. And of course, there's also a clear cultural predisposition against loans in Nigeria. Now, that's arguable. It's an arguable fact.
Yes, it is actually.
It's a cultural disposition against loans, right? Because I also see that a number of people are they're beginning to be more open to taking loans.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But just tell me, how have you been able to make loans appealing to SME business owners, right? And maybe just what you also think about, what do you think can be done to remove the cultural stigma for those who still have that bias against taking loans?
Okay, so there are different dimensions towards addressing. Let me start with the cultural predisposition. And yes, you said it's an arguable fact. I agree, and the facts support that view. If you look at CBN data Q3 2021. Right, consumer loans rose by 37% year on year to 2 trillion naira, and that was driven by better credit appraisals and product diversifications offered by banks such as Primera Microfinance Bank. Right, in that same period, the CBN determined that Nigeria's MSME credit gap stood at 617 billion. The gap, so the available finance versus the addressable need, that gap was 617 billion. So there's a massive untapped potential for financing in this market. And so that clearly points to the fact that there's a strong appetite for loans. And in terms of even how that disposition or predisposition has evolved generation after generation, we find that whereas that cultural bias was strong 2-3 generations ago, today it's very much less so, right? And also it's driven by very pragmatic needs. The economy, the population is growing very rapidly. So the demand for goods and services are growing.
Yes.
And so 20, 30 years ago, whereas you could fund your business's balance sheets through, family and friends funding.
Right.
The demand that's out there requires financing that's beyond the capacity that can be provided by,
because you just talked about 617 billion.
Precisely.
That's huge.
So it's something that has played very well into the relationship between service providers such as ours and the market. So to the question around how we make, loans appealing to customers, to any customer or client who is credible and really wants to have a healthy relationship with his or her friend financiers or their financiers, the biggest fear is, are we able to repay as and when due?
Right.
Once that concern is addressed, it becomes easier for them to digest the idea of taking a loan, because they know that, okay, like in the case of Primera Microfinance Bank, there are various ways of working together to achieve full and final repayment as and when due.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. During the COVID period, we saw that a lot of our customers were struggling. Because of the strong relationships we have with them, we were able to determine very clearly who was struggling and who wasn't. I mean, the numbers also showed very clearly, that. And what we did was, even within that whole lockdown scenario, we engaged with them and we were able to arrive at restructuring for quite a number of loans. Yeah. We were able to also take certain haircuts on certain fees just to make sure that at the end of the day, the customer is able to come back and what they would be required to pay is something that they would have the capacity to do.
Right.
And so for us, when we say we are partners for growth, that thinking and that philosophy is infused into everything we do. And by the time a customer sees that, look, these are people who are ready to sit with us and work with us as partners to grow this business. And whenever there are challenges, we all come around the table to address those challenges together, because we are stakeholders in the success of their business as well. Absolutely. And that makes it a lot easier for them to
okay. Let me stretch that conversation just a bit more, right? Because you talked about the 617 billion in terms of available financing, right?
Yes.
No, not available financing.
The addressable gap.
The addressable gap, absolutely. So that 617 billion, with the changing outlook or changing bias of Nigerians towards debt, because now you speak to some Nigerians and they actually believe that they have to have debt. Does it worry you that you are dealing with maybe risky or even now more risky assets?
It's a fact of life. And so we have to deal with it. Worrying about it won't solve the problem. What will solve it is, how do we understand the challenge that presents? And how do we build into our credit decisioning algorithms and processes and systems to make sure that we're able to determine, because at the end of the day, it's our duty to protect our shareholders' funds and make sure that we lend only to credible customers who can pay back and who meet the acceptance criteria for our risk assets, right? And so it's a win-win for everybody if, as we do at Primera, we approach it from the perspective of, okay, this is the gap, this is the challenge, this is the appetite. How do we arrive at systems that are able to clearly tell us who is credible, who is not, and the actual need of that credible person, and then we address that person's specific gap within the bucket of
that's actually quite interesting, because I was just thinking to myself, this is Nigeria, a country where we don't even know how much of oil we import. Right.
Data.
The data is
data.
It's supposed to be it's supposed to be all over the place, but now we have to sort of piece some information together.
Precisely.
So when you talk about getting data, it can help you assess the creditworthiness. That's essentially what you're saying.
That's essentially it. Yes.
So what challenges does that pose for you?
Huge, massive challenges. So we have a system where we have several buckets of biometric data. of the same people, but sitting in different dimensions. So, I mean, Bimbo, for example, you have a passport. You were biometrically, identified for that. That data sits somewhere. You have a driver's license. Same thing. It sits in another place. I mean, you have a phone. You have a bank account. Yeah. Each of these are data sets that speak to the same person.
Absolutely.
But they are scattered all over the place. That's even in a situation where, there exists such data.
Absolutely.
In many cases, I mean, when you do studies about financial inclusion and all of that, the problem is more around exclusion, right? And that is what is being addressed.
Okay.
Now, look at the imbalance between BVN, fully identified BVN customers of banks, between 50, not more than 60 million. And look at another data set, NIN, which is approaching 100 million today. We're talking of the same people. But we have a system where we have a differential of almost double between one data set and the other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now imagine what would happen if the BVN system is integrated with the NIN system. Immediately, we've doubled the scope of addressable, identifiable individuals that we can then bank. Much cleaner data.
Absolutely.
Just by the stroke of a pen, literally.
Absolutely.
We merge those two data sets and we have a much wider scope with clean data that we can deal with. So those are the types of challenges we face. But then I'm quite happy that technology has helped us financial institutions to be very creative in sometimes optimizing available data from various sources, cross-analyzing that with available data from these biometrically obtained data sets, and we arrive at better pictures.
So on a lighter note, you're not worried about borrowing somebody in Cameroon your funds.
Well, somebody in Cameroon is outside outside the jurisdictions that I'm allowed to. Okay. But in a situation where I'm able to identify and reach that person, and my regulator allows me to, I have no problems whatsoever doing that.
Right. Okay, so I'm sure you've noticed that there are a number of issues with SME owners running their businesses with their personal accounts.
Yes.
Instead of sort of registering a business account.
Precisely.
So the funds are commingled, and that sort of speaks a bit to the way the governance at those organizations.
Yes.
Now, these habits can have had adverse effects, right, on the financial and operating effectiveness of those businesses. What do you think is a lasting solution to helping some of these entrepreneurs see that there's a difference between the business and the person running the business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so fundamentally, let's address one issue. Yeah. Every businessman wants to succeed. Every businesswoman wants to succeed. And every businessman and woman is ready to do what is necessary, of course, legally, to make that happen. So fundamentally, there is a very strong appetite to do the right things and have the right habits for success. But we also need to recognize certain gaps. There's a gap around education, which we at Primera, through our SME clinics, we are addressing very, very vigorously to educate them around the needs for registration. Okay. And when you speak of registration and making their businesses more formal and better governed, what you've described is basically, it's simply a reflect in response to the difficulties that the average SME owners encounters in trying to, say, register their business and operate their accounts. So there's a barrier to entry into the formal registered business space. Okay. There are costs that are incurred. In running a bank account, there are also the barriers of entry need to be lowered as well. So what we need to do from an institutional perspective, from a societal perspective, from a governance perspective, is to say, look, what are those barriers? What are those obstacles at least from the perspective of the SME owners, let's have an honest conversation around how we can lower that and make it easier, make it attractive to become a registered business. What's wrong with declaring a 6-month holiday on the costs of registering a business?
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that. How much would it cost?
And make it efficient as well.
Precisely.
Not just holiday, but even make it efficient.
Make it efficient, right? So it's a subsidy, but you're subsidizing the right thing.
Absolutely.
Because what you're doing is you're bringing a lot of businesses into the formal space. They then become taxable, and they can operate in their own right as businesses. So
that's true.
I mean, what you described is really a reflex to these problems, and we need to then focus on those and solve them.
That leads me to an internal question around what the biggest issues are.
Yeah.
So if I asked you, what's the bigger issue for SME of these mammoth problems? Absence of governance and structures at the SMEs or lack of financing?
That's a very interesting one. And both are very close. But I would go for absence of governance.
Right.
Because what that does is it impacts the availability negatively. Negatively impacts the availability of infrastructure.
Right.
And for the businesses to run, that infrastructure needs to be provided for. And you find SMEs having to fund by themselves the provision of that infrastructure.
Right.
Power, security,
Absolutely.
and so many other things. That absence of governance also leads to the phenomenon of multiple taxation.
Absolutely.
Where you have various government agencies within the same jurisdiction chasing down MSME owners for various levies and taxes. It's basically a gap in governance, just synchronizing and sitting down to say, look, these SME owners are stakeholders in our space. If they do well, the society we govern does well. So how do we streamline their obligations in terms of taxes and levies and so on and make it easier for them? And in doing so, we even have better transparency, on taxes and how much we can get, and we plow that back into the infrastructure. So you see, it's a cycle, and this is something I've seen in my experience cutting across Africa. I mean, I've worked in various African countries, and it's quite interesting how the cultures, the languages change, but the fundamental challenges are the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, very good. Thanks for that. So beyond the struggle for finance, to secure finances, right? There are other things that SMEs also face that are challenges. Right, power failures, for instance, that's availability to electricity.
Yeah.
Right, lack of entrepreneurial education, insecurity.
Exactly.
Right? Which is not an SME problem. That's everybody's problem.
Huge. Everybody. It affects you and I. Yes.
And then we've seen that your company has partnered with Infri branches to deliver solar power.
Yes.
To businesses via asset financing.
Yes.
You've also partnered with the likes of SME Mall to host webinars on business growth.
Yes.
Right. But what has been the impact of these partnerships?
Yeah.
And what other initiatives do you plan to pursue to ensure that these SMEs thrive?
So the partnerships that you described basically are proofs of concept from our perspective. So, I mean, let us test the waters and see if we can, make a difference working with these partnerships. And the early results have been very, very encouraging. Okay. So when you talk of a situation where energy costs are spiraling, and there's now a common sense conversation around renewable energy. The question is, how available or how accessible can we make that? And our partnerships with Infri branches, for example, and a few others that we are currently, discussing with, will help to make it more affordable and more available. And we're talking of renewable energy systems cutting across different income brackets. Okay, so something that can be afforded by the roadside barber and so on and so forth, right up to families and homes and businesses. So the early results have been very, very good, and these partnerships have shown us that this is the way forward.
Okay.
And we are set to announce a number of other partnerships, in the near future that speak to the various areas of impact that we're looking to make.
Anyone that you mind to share now?
Not at the moment. I'm keeping it close to my chest for now. We're still bound under non-disclosure
all right.
situations at the moment, but we'll come out with announcements sooner than later. All
right, sounds good. And then there was a report recently, State of Entrepreneurship in Nigeria. So 2021 report by the Faith Institute that revealed that 67% of entrepreneurs in Nigeria are between 18 and 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically seeing a rapid rise of young business owners.
Exactly.
Right. So what's the strategy to attract and retain this set of people?
Yes.
Do you have any customized products in the works to address these people? And does any part of this concern you or give you any concerns?
No concerns, rather excitement.
Okay.
Because and this is inevitable. I mean, the demographic change points very clearly to the fact that this will be. I mean, younger people are now the force to be reckoned with. At Primera, we are digital first.
Okay.
And the demographic you described are digital first, digital natives as well. So it's actually, for me, really exciting. It gives us an opportunity to look at new ways of repositioning our products, new ways of creating access to those products on a self-service basis for such, customers. And knowing full well that these are customers who are more comfortable with being assessed for, their viability in a digital way, and therefore would be quite ready to engage, along that dimension. Right. So for us, it's a huge.
So this is an alignment with your current strategy, because
completely
digital. These are young and up and coming croup who are also digital.
Completely.
So it's a meeting of minds. Pretty
Absolutely. Much. That's why we're really excited about it.
Okay. Yeah, of course, because today interconnectedness is a significant characteristic of today's society, right?
Absolutely.
Internet of Things, IoT plays a big part. Exchange of data is pretty much how you run business today, right? But embedded finance is integrated in financial services today, right? To elevate client experience and software unification. Is also helping to yield consistent and efficient global operations globally, right?
Yes.
But let me ask you, so how have you leveraged technology, right? Interconnectedness, IoT, right? To improve your customer's experience or to deliver the customer, let me put it that way, to deliver customer experience.
Yes.
Right. And if you haven't, what are your plans to enhance that? If you're already doing it, and if you haven't, what are your plans to do so?
Yeah, I mean, thanks. Great question. So the first thing we need to understand is the process that lands any business at automation, which is the end goal, at least for now. And that then opens up, possibilities for Internet of Things, IoT, and so on. The first is you need to digitize everything around you. So, for example, whereas somebody engaged with the bank by filling out a paper form, you move those forms to electronic forms. And the existing forms you have in your records, you digitize them and make them available electronically.
So it's also an archive management system.
Precisely. Then you look at your processes as well. How many of those are hugely dependent on, manual interventions and so on, and you need to then significantly whittle that down. What that does when you digitize your processes is that it creates better transparency. You're able to really understand how well or how not well, so to speak, that you're serving your customer. And when you create such an ecosystem, such a transparent ecosystem, it gets you ready for automation, because automation is driven by bots, it's driven by logic, is driven by algorithms. These are not animate, right? And they can only interface with, digital platforms as well. So for us, we are on that journey.
Fantastic.
And the word journey, I'm using that deliberately because that is really what it is. It's an evolution. But we're really happy with the pace that we've made at Primera Microfinance Bank on that journey. Okay. And we're very happy with the partnerships that, we have established that help us along those lines. And the results we've seen across various impact areas, our client experience management, our lending funnel, right from origination through to managing the portfolio, our data management and analytics, even our cost management and expense management systems have now been digitized. Our sales and marketing has been digitized. Our human capital management, internal to the firm, we've digitized all of that. All the systems and processes that support these areas I've described, we've digitized them, and we're getting them ready for automation.
Fantastic.
Which will then open us up to possibilities that IoT presents.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's now even focus a bit more on technology, right?
Yeah.
Because we're in a digitized world.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think one of the key emerging technologies, or one of the technologies that is even setting the pace these days, is blockchain.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And a lot of financial institutions world over have keyed into blockchain.
Yes.
Right. Given that access to finance is a core concern for SMEs, how do you think blockchain can drive the sector? And what impact can it have on financiers, right, and other financial institutions?
Yeah. Blockchain carries really, really huge potential. Very strong, right? And the use cases that become most apparent are in the B2B payment space, business to business payment space, right? Offering financial solutions. And we are seeing global firms like Amex, Visa, MasterCard building such capabilities and investing in them. We've also seen a couple of companies that, have attracted seed capital, to fund that. The question though is, when we look at the Nigerian context, from the customer side and from the financing side, the banks, and from the regulatory dimension as well, how comfortable, how ready are we to adopt blockchain? We've seen globally a certain unease from the regulatory perspective around adopting blockchain, and that is completely understandable. Regulation thrives on transparency, openness. Blockchain, the underlying principle around blockchain is almost in the opposite. There's a certain anonymity, so to speak, around the players in that space. Bridging that gap, the ability to bridge that gap, is what will significantly expand our ability to leverage it. But looking at it purely from what that technology, blockchain technology, offers, are there very strong use cases? Is there a business case for it? Yes, there is, clearly, across various dimensions. I talked about B2B payments. But for us to participate, especially as a regulated entity, the regulatory angle and the comfort of the regulatory body or bodies needs to be addressed. So there has to be a dialogue that puts everyone at ease around how
But the concerns of the regulatory body, is it specifically around blockchain or around cryptocurrency? Because cryptocurrency leverages blockchain.
Precisely.
However, the regulators have expressed concerns over crypto because it's a currency.
Yes.
But in terms of the blockchain technology, I mean, is that something you think the regulators will be averse to welcoming?
For me, the jury is still out. I don't see an aversion. I rather see a willingness to interrogate further. I mean, like you said, cryptocurrency is a derivative of our blockchain. The question is, okay, what other derivatives of blockchain would come up and how do we deal? Are we able to deal? That's really the fundamental question, right? So whereas, the point of argument was around cryptocurrency, I think fundamentally what it really was is, what is this thing called blockchain? What's this animal? What else can it throw at us in the future? How better can we understand it? How better can we integrate it in a way, a manner that does not create certain risks that would be unpalatable to players in the industry and probably create some imbalance in the system, I think.
I like the fact that you've talked about the journey, because I think any organization that is not on a journey, right, is either in a place of complacency, which inevitably means a decline in business, right?
And
so the journey means you are on the path of continuous improvement.
Yes.
Whether you are small, looking to be big, or big becoming to be even bigger, right?
Absolutely.
But I think for me, for Primera, but the question for me is when is Primera going to key into blockchain? When are we going to see Primera saying we're going into blockchain, right? In this journey.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So this journey of yours, when do we see? Give us a timeline.
It's not possible. Honestly, it's impossible to give a timeline now. And you know that, right? Again, we are regulated, right? But what we are happy to see is our regulators really begin to come out with discussion papers and working papers around how the financial system can leverage a lot of these technologies, right? And so it's very welcome. We would rather work at the pace of both, and there's a tension. Let's be very clear about that. There's a tension between what the market wants, the opportunities it sees, and what the pace of adoption from industry and regulation is. Right. Managing that balance and that tension really is key. So while at this point, quite clearly, nobody can give a timeline, at least from our perspective, what I can say is that sooner than later, we will arrive at those milestones that make those possibilities available.
Excellent. Thank you. And then in financial services, right, specifically, we've seen that automation is helping businesses unlock a lot of value.
Yes.
Through things like improved revenues, customer service and customer access, being efficient, risk management, right? Even at PwC, right? One of the pillars of our strategy is being digital. And that's in two folds for us. Yeah. So in one fold, in everything we do in PwC is digital.
Precisely.
We have a global partnership with Google. When there was the pandemic, we were able to work seamlessly. We delivered. In fact, I think we had
so did we actually at Primera, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then, of course, the second leg is how we engage our clients. We engage our clients with digital solutions.
Precisely.
Ways that they can be optimized.
Yeah.
So for you, what role has digitization, automation played in your internal processes and your service delivery?
Massive role, and it's something that we're very excited about. Right. I mean, take for example, we've grown as a business very strongly year on year over the past 2 years. Right. From customer count, number of transactions, the balance sheets.
Give us the size. Pick one of those matrices and tell us.
So for example, we've between 2020 and now, we've more than doubled our balance sheet.
Wow.
in 2.5 years.
Impressive.
Profitability also has followed that same traction, that same trend.
Excellent.
In terms of our customer size, we've doubled our customer size as well. And we're able to serve those customers very, very comfortably without expanding our headcount.
Right.
Our headcount has stayed the same. Quite frankly, it has actually fallen a bit. And what that says is that we've acquired the capacities to, run a bigger business, serve more customers, but with fewer people. The only way to do that is by digitization and automation. And so the fact that I can, share these facts clearly tells anybody.
So what do you say to skeptics? People that don't believe that significant technology spend results in improved business performance and savings down the road. What do you say to skeptics about that, around that?
I would say if you are averse to investing in technology, you're investing in the gradual death of your business.
Wow.
And there's no other way to put it.
That's profound.
It's just the truth.
That's profound. Thank you. I think maybe my final question as we close out this session is that what do you hope the next 10 years will look like for SMEs and the Nigerian economy? And what role, more importantly, is Primera going to play in achieving this future?
I think with the relatively little that we at Primera Microfinance Bank have at our disposal and how we've been able to deploy those resources, it is very clear that our ambitions are very strongly aligned towards growing the Nigerian economy from the SME space up. And as we grow those SMEs and they continue banking with us, we will grow. That's how we see ourselves growing. We see ourselves growing through the prosperity we are able to create for our customers.
Excellent.
And when we arrive at that point, we want to, in 10 years' time, look back on where we are today and be very proud standing with our partners, our SMEs, who by then would be corporates, right? They would no longer be termed SMEs because they would have grown. And then make ourselves available to the next generation of SMEs who want to grow to become what we have become and who want to take from the example that our customers are able to display to attain such heights. And we will all be better for it as far as the Nigerian economy is concerned. And we're absolutely committed to achieving that dream.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think before you go, so we have a number of questions for you, 3 questions.
More questions. I love them. Let's go.
Yeah, so we're over with the formal interview, but I think now we just want to take you into 3 questions that will tell us more about Unwana, right?
Okay. Unwana, right?
The first one here is, actually there are 4 questions, but I'll tell you about the last question in a moment, right? The 3 questions, the first one here is, what's one view you seem to find very few people agree on?
I would say...
This is even harder than the initial question. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is tougher. I think the most difficult thing a human being can achieve is change. And I think the most difficult question, especially if you have a group of people, is how do we achieve that change? And in my experience, it's easier to talk about change and way more difficult to actually carry out change. Okay. And the debate around what change means and how change will be carried out, I think is a topic that I find there are as many perspectives as there are people, and that makes for a very healthy, very, very healthy and robust debate.
Okay, that's one. So like I was saying, from the previous interviewer that we had, or interview, that we had here, he answered a number of questions, right? Like you've done today.
Yes.
But we don't let our interviewees go without throwing in questions for the next interviewee.
Fair enough.
So we're here now, and I'm about to tell you what he asked you to answer.
Okay. And
you also have the opportunity to ask our next interviewee what his own question will be. Right?
Perfect.
So his question, and I think this is from the CEO of Kuda. Right?
Oh, interesting. Yes. Okay, great.
He says, do you use digital finance products? Why or why not?
I use digital. So yes, personally, I use digital finance products, payments mostly. Not loans or lending, but yeah, I use them all the time, and I use them because they just make life easier for me. I'm able to make my payments. I'm able to see them, and it's convenient. So I think it's the ease and the convenience that it brings that attracts me to them, and I'm huge. I run my life literally on digital products. Yeah.
All right, very good. Okay, so now that you've answered that question, so tell us
my turn.
It's your turn. Absolutely, it's your turn. What do you want the next person to answer?
So I'd like the next interviewee to answer the question around disruption. Where does he or she see disruption evolving in the financial services space in Nigeria? And what specific dimensions, if he or she, can share, where does he or she see the potential impact areas and impact scopes of that next phase of disruption in the Nigerian financial services space. That's what I'm
all right, fantastic.
Looking to know.
I hope that will make for a very difficult question for interview. So thank you very much, Unwana, for coming to PwC's podcast studio. And looking forward to having you again and again. Right?
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so very much, people. Thank you.